Okay, so there's a new documentary on Netflix called How to Rob a Bank, right? It is directed by Stephen Robert Morse and Seth Porges. They also both co-wrote the film with Maxim Gertler-Jaffe and Max Peltz. It is then produced by Maxim Gertler-Jaffe, Stephen Robert Morse, Max Peltz, and Seth Porges. Right? It is executive produced by Liz DeCasra. Um, who else? We also have some line production from Michael R. Williams, archival production from Judson Wells. The story produced was Brian Palmer. Yeah, you know, Leo Birenberg and Ramiro Rodriguez Zarapira took care of the music. Michael Whale, Jacob Sachs Jones, and Dominic Barbero were on cinematography. Simon Barker, Paulo Padilla, and Mark Vives edit the piece. Production design is Brian Davey and Aaron O'Kay. Coraline Jarvis was on art direction. Martin Spencer is the costume design for all our reenactment pieces. Right. So in this, we have got Scott Skurlock, right? Ellen Galassa, who was an FBI agent. Sean Johnson, another FBI agent. Mike Magan, a Seattle detective. Right, David Curley, a news anchor. Deborah Horn, a news reporter. We've got Scott's friends, right? Elizabeth Stanton, TJ Lousy, Steve Myers. There's his sister, Scott's sister, Susan Skurlock. Some other friends, Stephen Barper and Alban Feister. Right, we've got Mark Biggins, who was one of Scott's accomplices, and Steve Myers, another of his accomplices. Then there is Susan Dodd and Scott Levin, who are both bank managers. Scott's father, William Skurlock. Right, and then in the reenactment, we have got Jordan Burchett, who plays Scott Skurlock. Tristan McKinnon plays Steve Myers. Kurt Ostland plays Mark Biggins. Gavin Langello plays Mike Magan. Scott Patey plays Scott Levine. All right, we got Cesra Vega as Jamie. Leslie Mirza as a bank teller. Maya Michaels as another teller. All right, so yeah, we have all of that. Right, there's other archival, but you know, I probably skip that. Right, so the gist is it's 1990s Seattle, and the world's best bank robber has it all: looks, charm, a sprawling treehouse hideout, and an uncanny ability to disappear using Hollywood-style makeup. But as law enforcement inches closer, his once carefree life spirals into a suffocating trap, forcing him and his crew to risk it all in one final heist. Yeah, and like what was actually forcing him into one final high? Like, see, this, you know, it was one of those ones, when Netflix like plays bits of stuff, right? Because there was no inkling to watch this, but I was flicking through and there's a little bit played, and I was like, hmm, that could actually be interesting. So I gave it a shot, and it is, what I mean, it's interesting the way it's done, right? Because we've got this archival footage, we've got the reenactments, and then they also do an animation of reenactments as well, right? So it's kind of fascinating the way it's all put together, right? And we're learning about, Hollywood, this guy who they can't, pin down, and he's robbing all of these banks, supposedly inspired by Point Break, right? Watched Point Break and was like, I need to rob banks. And I feel that says it all, right? Now before that, he was doing some drug stuff, right? But it got dicey. His connect got killed. So then, yeah, he's watched Point Bank and he's like, I need to get into robbing banks, which I feel tells you someone is a little bit mentally unstable. You know what I mean? Because it's one of those things, right? Where remember back in the day when they would be like rap music are gonna turn people bad. All of this, right? Video games make people do things. There's all this nonsense when it they don't. It doesn't, right? Because you watch crazy shit all the time, right? Growing up, Tom and Jerry dropping pianos on each other's heads, chopping bits off their bodies, just all of this crazy. But you didn't think like, oh, I'm gonna drop a piano on my friend, right? I'm gonna throw a bowling ball at my buddy. Like no one thinks that. You only think that if you know your synapses are firing in a different way. Right. And that's the thing with all of this stuff, like anyone that watches something and it's like, oh, I want to do, yeah, you're not right. Right. You're not right. And there's layers, there's a spectrum to all of this stuff. But at no point did anyone go, oh, yeah, obviously Scott wasn't right. Right. Now, he's living in this tree house. Right. And you've got like friends and his sister talking and be like, oh, I went to the treehouse and Scott's walking around with nothing on, just his tool belt. And I was like, oh, that's normal. I just pretended, and you're just like, okay, so no one was just like, yo, son, what the fuck are you doing? Right? No one's doing that, which is weird. Right. But yeah, everyone's just talking how he's a great guy and introspective and just all of this stuff. And yeah, he just happened to be a bank robber, which is just interesting. Right? It's interesting. Then we're hearing from all the cops involved in the whole process. We're hearing from bank tellers, right? They've got everyone to come talk about how all of this went down and their experiences, which that's interesting, right? That's interesting. Like you want to be like, oh, what was it like? Right? How did it feel to be in that situation? Right? You'd like to know that. And as I said, the way they produce it with, we're seeing camcord footage, we're seeing video surveillance footage, right? We've got all of that. Then we've got these reenactments, right? We've got the animation. So they're breaking all of this stuff down. And you're like, okay, interesting. But I think for me, because this is, I think it's like an hour and 40 minutes, something like that, right? I think if it was shorter, it might have been a bit more grabby, right? Just because what we then get, it feels like a lot of people playing Monday night quarterback, right? Actually, it should probably be Tuesday night quarterback, right? Because you've got Monday night games. You know what I mean? So yeah, they're doing that because you've got like people going, yeah. And so I knew on this day, this would be the day we were gonna catch him. Or it's just like, Scott spoke to me and I knew, oh, this would be the last time. This was the last time I was going to talk to him. And I was like, I had a dream and I told him it was going to, and I'm just like, it all felt a little performative. You know what I mean? Like a lot of these things people were saying, it didn't feel honest. It didn't feel natural. It felt like they're saying it to be catchy. Everyone had like these, you know what I mean, little statements and one-liners, and it's just like, oh boy, nah, because I'm not buying it. Maybe what they're saying is true, but the way it's being shown, I'm not buying it, right? This is just like, hey, so I told my team, we've got to make a stand, right? Or it's just like, I didn't know they were gonna start shooting, and yeah, and it's just like, yo, you're chasing bank robbers who you know have weapons. You've seen the weapons in the surveillance footage. You've heard the accounts from the tellers and the people in the banks. And you're like, oh, I didn't think it could go this way. Seems weird, right? Seems weird. And then you've got the bank robbers being like, oh, yeah, I didn't realize that the people in the banks or the tellers would be affected by what we were doing. We didn't kill anyone. And you're just like, you're pointing guns at people. what what the fuck, man? There was just a lot of craziness being said, and it's just, yeah, it all felt way too scripted. You know what I mean? All felt way too scripted, and I think, and then because you're hearing this stuff over and over again, like, you know, it was kind of formulaic what they were doing, but it's just like, okay, but it's been years and you haven't caught them. So if it's so formulaic, how come you haven't caught them yet? It can't be formulaic. Otherwise, you would have caught them a long time ago. They robbed, I think it's like 17 to 19 banks. You know what I mean? So it's it's a weird one. It's a weird little documentary. It's fascinating in its production, but you get to a point and you're just a little bit like, okay, I'm kind of done with this, yo. I'm kind of done with this, yo. You know what I mean? So that's the thing with that. Now, if you're a big fan of these true life things, right? Maybe you like it, right? There's so many documentaries like this. So, I don't really watch them, so I don't know how this fares in comparison. Maybe it's one of the better ones. Maybe there's ones that are far better than what this is. I'm not sure. But I think if you're a fan of this, it's probably worth giving it a look, and you'll probably know early on how good it is in comparison, right? So it's on Netflix, you know what I mean? Which makes it kind of like, okay, you can dip in and out, right? You don't have to spend it. Well, if you don't have a Netflix, then you would have to. But if you got it, you can check it. Go see what do you think about this? Because yeah, it just felt a little bit kind of staged, right? That's what it is. Like one of those hokey found footage films, right? That's what it kind of seemed like towards the end. Okay, we got people talking about, okay, so if I ever have to talk about this, how would I want myself to be seen, right? Oh, if I say this, it'll make me sound cool, right? It just seemed like a lot of that. But How to Rob a Bank, it's on Netflix. See what you think.